All right, so let's try to figure out what's going on here. So it seems here that whatever we're getting in this result is not what we are looking for. So it could be a few issues here going on. The first could be that we're actually not returning any result here. This is where the documentation comes in very handy to make sure that you are not missing something. So always have the documentation in hand close by so that you can go through and try to see what could be the problem. So in this case we have, if you go to Eloquent relationships, let's click to one-to-many, and let's see if we are missing something here. No, this looks just fine, and yes, that looks just fine, but we are not doing a loop in our situation. However, here it seems we can do a where clause there, and we can also tell it to get the very first result. Okay, so these are omittable. Some of these can be omitted, but let's try and add this first at the end so that we make sure that we're actually querying something. So let me paste that there. I will save this and let's give it a shot and see if that was the issue. So refresh the page. So it's saying a column was not found. You might have forgotten to run your migrations. You can run your migrations, blah blah blah. So it's diving deep into the query exception class here, which is not very helpful for us. So what I think is going on here is that I think we were missing this, so I'll just leave that there. First, we'll just get the first result. That's what this is for. If you want, yeah, actually, that's that. So now let's go to the function itself here. I think maybe that's where the problem is, because it's saying a column was not found. Because in here, what happens is that it has to match two columns. The first column is the ID of the other one. So for example, in this case, where we have a post table that has category ID, so what it's expecting is the category table to have ID. It tries to match, because this is the post table. So there we have the categories table, but then our ID is not categories underscore ID, it's category ID. So something like this, a very small difference. Let's say your table is posts like this, right? And which it is in our case. And then the other one is categories, right? So what we're supposed to have is that in our posts table, we're supposed to have a foreign key, or a key that represents an ID in the categories, and we code it category underscore ID, like so. Okay, but because the table is called categories like this, we were supposed to call it categories ID, like so, and then it would have known on its own where to find what we are looking for, and in here it will match that with the ID, like so. So you must have these two columns in there. So you follow the name of the table, and then you add ID there, and then you leave the ID here. But sometimes these things are not possible to do. So instead, in a situation like that, you have to tell it what the columns are. So just put a comma there and put both columns there. Now I'm not going to try to explain which column should come first and which one should come second, because if you can just put either on each side, and then you test it. If it doesn't work, just swap them around. So let's do this. Let's say category ID here, and then the other one is ID. So all we know is that these are the two columns that should match, right? We shouldn't bother about which one comes first, which one comes second. So I did this so that we see if we're going to get more errors from this. So let's see if this problem is solved. So let's refresh. Still, it's saying a column was not found. Okay, so at least now, I don't know if we had this even before. Let me check that. I didn't see that. So back here, let me save. Let's refresh. Oh, so we had this. Look at that. I didn't see this part here. So we have a query here, right here, which is trying to explain what's going on. So it's a good thing it shows the query here. Unknown column, categories, post ID. Okay, so it's looking for post ID in the categories column, which does not exist. So this is why it was a good idea to add those there. But it seems like we still have an error with those in there. So let's refresh and see what's happening now. So now it's saying unknown column, categories, category ID. So as you can see here, it's looking for category ID in the categories table. Okay, which means those IDs have swapped, because it's supposed to look for ID in the categories table, and the category ID should be looked for in the posts table. So it means all we have to do is swap these around. So move this over here, and then let's move that comma over there, like so. This should solve the problem. So let's refresh now, and there we go. Easy peasy, right? Not so easy peasy, but it worked. Look at that. We have food there, and that's great. So just a recap of what's going on here, just in case these runarounds were too confusing. The thing we are doing here is we wanted to connect the post table to the categories table. So what we do is we create a function here that is going to be used to read the particular category depending on the record that we have. So this is why we added this function here. That way we don't have to create a query. We just run this function and it will return the right category row to match with the result that we got when querying a particular post. So this is why we created this function right here using has many like that. And then, so how to know which class to put this function is to look at the main class. In here we are reading posts, right? So we put it in the post class here. So here when we are reading from the controller, this is how we do it. We retrieve a row, and then from the row we try to get the particular category, because this returned row is actually an instance of post here, so it can run this function because it's practically this class here. Okay, so it can run that function, but it seems you need to add that in order to get the first result. Or maybe you can add get here to get all the results, but then first will work just fine because we just need one result anyway. So that's why I added that first here. It seems if we just run it like this, it doesn't really get the result yet. It just runs the query and not get the results. So then you get the result with that. Once we get that, we add it here, and now we have a category row as well to deal with on the edit post here, so we can utilize it there. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too complicated. If you find this system of doing things like this, connecting these relationships, a bit cumbersome, then you just have to learn this one instead, where you do the join yourself. This is exactly what it's doing here, I guess. It's just that here you do it manually by yourself. You connect, because if you check that query we had, it's kind of similar to this. So you can either use this method here, or where you join the tables, all the results are in one row, like they're on one table. You join the two tables into one, or you query them separately like this, and then you can join the data when displaying it. Alright, so I hope you've learned something new in here, and in the next video we'll see how we can actually post this edited data. But let's try a different post here and see if the edit will work on it as well. So let me click edit here. Okay, that one worked fine. Edit here, that worked fine. Okay, so this is good. So far so good. I'll see you in the next video.